What's up, y'all? It's Tariq here. So if you were one of the Airbnb hosts that got offered the opportunity to buy their stock at the IPO price, you could have bought 275 shares. That was the maximum amount that they allowed people to buy. And you could have bought it for $68 a share. Guys, I'm a buyer in Airbnb. I wind up investing some stock. I'll tell you later on exactly how much I actually invested and what purchase price that I got in for, but it's a very speculative and risky stock at the moment. So let's jump in. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Tariq Johnson. I have been investment licensed for 13 years. I've helped thousands of clients invest their money, help them with retirement planning. I've managed over $100 million over the many years for my clients individually. But this video is not investment advice. It's for educational and entertainment purposes only. So stay tuned. We're gonna hop into if you should buy Airbnb stock. So let's jump into that. Real quick, if you feel like you're getting value out of the video, I'd appreciate if you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. I'm gonna be posting some really cool videos about how I'm investing the money that I just received from selling one of my businesses. I built a $2.4 million franchise business selling juice, sold one of the locations in California, and now I've been actively investing that money more and more. So make sure you subscribe, hit the like button if you feel like you're getting value out of the video so that more and more people can see it and it gets picked up by the YouTube algorithm. But now let's jump into the meat of whether you should buy Airbnb stock. So let me just tell you, my point number one is that the Airbnb IPO was an absolutely genius move. And it was genius for two different reasons. One of them is pretty obvious. So number one is that they raised about $3.5 billion in the IPO. So what that means is that they were able to actually get about $3.5 billion in cash to help fuel the growth of their business. What they invest that in, that's to be determined, but usually a startup and a startup, but usually a startup or a growth company like Airbnb, they're investing in the infrastructure. They'll probably wind up going out and buying more companies and more businesses that make sense and are in alignment with their business and invest more and more money into marketing and staff and different things like that. Airbnb's at a weird point because they just finished laying off about 25% of their workforce because of COVID and the significant drop that they experienced in revenues. Another reason why Airbnb's IPO, in my opinion, was absolutely genius, it was an incredibly smart move, is Airbnb announced that they were cutting $800 million in marketing spend. $800 million. That is a significant amount of money to cut your marketing spend during a time where you need to get more people on your platform to increase revenue. Well, you've got to market. Granted, they said in 2019 that they were planning on doing an IPO in 2020 to raise money, but think about all of the free press that Airbnb has got over the last few months in deciding to do the IPO. I mean, they have gotten so much free press between all of the articles that have been written on them and all of the YouTubers like myself making videos about them. They've gotten a ton of press, and what COVID is actually showing is it's showing that people want to be able to work virtually and remote and have flexibility in where they live. And so I really think Airbnb is actually poised for a lot of growth. I think the waters are going to be pretty rocky beforehand. But let's jump into kind of where Airbnb was before pre all of the pandemic, because we need to understand where they were and what they were doing before we can figure out if we should invest in them. Hey guys, quick reminder, make sure if you're getting value out of this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be posting some really exciting videos about exactly what I'm investing in, what my portfolio is, the price points in which I bought it. It's going to be a super exciting journey, but more than me posting what I'm doing, I'm going to be sharing some really what I feel like is valuable content to help you grow your wealth. This is all about what this channel will be on. So we're going to talk about stocks, we're going to talk about investing, we're going to talk about how you can make the most out of your money. And stick around because we're going to get into the if you should invest Airbnb, but as an investor, and if you're thinking about investing in Airbnb, then you got to make sure that you're being a smart, educated investor, right? Because if you're just going online, watching videos from people about, hey, you should buy this, you shouldn't buy this, and you're making your decisions off of a quick whim, then that's a recipe for disaster. So you can certainly get your information from videos like this, but make sure that you're thorough, watch the video in full, get all the information so that you can make an educated decision as an investor. Okay, so let's take a look at where Airbnb has been in the past. In 2016, it expanded its service to include experiences. And this is something that is still something that Airbnb is really growing, and I think it's still going to be a significant opportunity for them as they continue to look forward to the future. But if we take a look here, so let's look at the Airbnb bookings. So in 2015, they had 25 million bookings. 2016, they doubled with 52 million bookings. 2017, they doubled again with 115 million bookings. In 2018, they were up somewhere about 25 to 30%, up to 140 million bookings. And then in 2019, they were at 187 million bookings. So obviously Airbnb was on a great growth trajectory. They had significant growth, and they've really become the key player in this space, and there's really no one that can compete with Airbnb at that level. But Airbnb was able to capitalize, and sometimes here's the thing, and we'll talk about this in a minute when we talk about whether you should buy Airbnb stock right now, is sometimes it's about the name brand, and sometimes the intrinsic value, the actual valuation, because that's the argument right now about Airbnb, is that it's valued way too high. It's about $100 billion company. It's a little bit less now, but that the valuation makes no sense. Well, look at Tesla and look at the stock price of Tesla and the valuation that Tesla has grown to, is it does not match its valuation at all. Tesla has a higher valuation than the top 3 largest automakers combined. I mean, Tesla is an absolute giant, and their revenues don't support it. So people are willing to pay for future growth and name brands that they love. Hey, make sure to drop me a comment below and tell me what you think about the Airbnb stock. Are you buying it? Are you thinking that it's going to drop? Are you waiting? Do you think it's a total sham? It is completely overvalued? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if we look at Airbnb's listings, so in 2012, it was about 120,000, 300,000, then it grew to 800,000, 1.2 million, 2.1 million, then 4 million, then grew to 6 million, and then 7 million in 2019. And then in terms of Airbnb's user base, it went from 6 million in 2012. We got a couple year jump here, but to 2015 went to 50 million, 2016 100 million, 2018 150 million. In terms of Airbnb's revenue, in 2019 they did $4.7 billion in revenue, which was up from $3.6 billion in 2018, and we can see kind of how far along they came since doing $423 million in 2014. And then here's the key part. This is really important, is their valuation. So if we look at their valuation, in 2019, they were valued at $38 billion. In 2020, they were valued at $18 billion. So the last time they had raised money was in 2017. When they raised money in 2017, they were valued at about $31 billion. And so, look, when these groups come up with these valuations, whether they're accurate or not, the valuation's always going to be different when the business is private. And again, we'll talk about that point in just a second, because I want to talk about that when we discuss like whether you should actually buy or invest in an Airbnb stock and if it actually makes sense, and more importantly, if you can make money off of investing in Airbnb stock. So here's the thing, in May of 2020, Airbnb had to scramble to raise more money. Their revenues were dropping, they were having to cut costs, and they went into survival mode. And look, at that time, when you're in business, when someone needs you the most, supply and demand, obviously with their business being threatened, they were going to be valued at less. So they were valued at $18 billion when they raised some additional capital. They also raised money through debt. They raised about $1 billion. And so their valuation dropped. And so part of the debate right now is if Airbnb stock is overvalued. And the answer is yes. Of course they're overvalued at the moment at their current revenues and all of the uncertainty in the marketplace. They certainly are. Now, I wind up investing about $5,000 in Airbnb stock. What I did was about 10 o'clock in the morning on the day of the IPO, I set a limit order for $5,000 and I set it at $160 limit. So that means that I set it so that as long as the price was below $160 or less, that price would automatically execute and I would buy that investment. Now, one would wonder, why in the world didn't I wait? Like, knowing that this IPO could be very volatile, why not wait? I wasn't sure, to be quite honest. I thought there was a possibility that it could really take off and not come back because there was so much hype, even though the stock already got driven up from $68 a share. For me, that $5,000 that I was investing it's this very, very, very small percentage of my stock portfolio. So for me, I'm really dipping my toes in the water by putting $5,000 into the stock. And my stocks are very well diversified, as well as my cash holdings and various different investments. So it made sense for me. This is where you have to understand your own individual situation when you're investing, when deciding if you should be buying an Airbnb stock or not. But before we jump into that, let's talk about some of the opportunities that Airbnb has, because I do agree that the current valuation is high. But for me, I was willing to buy because I believe that the current valuation is pricing in its future growth. And I think the news can get more and more exciting with Airbnb, quite frankly. And all it takes is one really strong quarterly earnings reports for people and investors to hear something or see something that's positive or encouraging. And even though their stock might just kind of be trending around the price that it actually opened at on the market, which is somewhere around that $145 to $150 price range, if you get good news, the stock can take off and it can soar and it can go up really high. And if it gets bad news, then the stock could drop pretty significantly. My perspective is, if the stock falls, I'll just buy more. So, my strategy as a long-term investor is always to buy the dips if it's a quality business that I think is going to continue to grow over the long term. For me personally, I am a long-term investor. I'm really focused on holding this stock for 2, 3, 5, 10 years or longer. And as the stock continues to fall, I'm going to see those as buying opportunities, and I'm going to be investing more and buying the dips in those stocks. Now, in terms of the opportunities, the CEO for Airbnb was on CNBC, and he was talking about the fact that the landscape is going to be changing right now, and that people want to have the ability to work and live remotely and wherever they want. And so with people working remotely and being able to work remotely, people may decide to go spend a month at an Airbnb by the beach or in their favorite city and be able to work from home in their full-time job and be living somewhere else. And maybe they're living somewhere else and they're using Airbnb in order to accomplish that. And while they're living somewhere else and they're renting out an Airbnb and paying that cost and adding to the overall revenue for Airbnb, maybe they're renting out their place on Airbnb where they weren't a host before. So I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years, especially as we start to get out of the trend, out of the pandemic, and things start to improve, and with the vaccine and all those different things coming out, I think we're going to see at some point the growth trajectory for Airbnb winds up just increasing significantly. And I think that they're going to increase their user base, and we're going to see some crazy growth numbers. And so that's one of the reasons why I was willing to pay the premium for just a little bit of money to see how they do. Now, another aspect of it is that people don't want to stay in hotels right now. Like, people don't want to be all crowded in a hotel with other people and in that traditional form of travel. And the demand for individuals wanting to go more and more into a private place is going up. And there's actually some interesting statistics on that Airbnb posted. So let's take a look at what Airbnb has to say about this, because I think it's really telling that they actually kind of put what their plan is. And obviously it's a little bit of PR for them, but it says in 2021, work from home could become work from any home as remote working continues to be a reality for many people. And Airbnb did a survey, and 83% of the respondents are in favor of relocating as part of remote working. A quarter of them, 25% of them, believe that they will be able to live where they want and work remotely. And 1 of 5 have relocated their living situation during the pandemic, either temporarily or permanently. And 60% of parents are willing to consider working remotely and traveling with their kids if schools continue to be disrupted. So I think what we're seeing is that the way that we live, work, travel, learn is changing dramatically. And I think that's going to continue. And I think that Airbnb is the most poised in the travel industry to take advantage and capitalize on that disruption. And I think what the market is pricing in, because of how expensive their shares went, is that people are willing to pay for that growth. And people, there's a lot of cash on the sidelines and people want something to invest in, and there's a euphoria that's driving up the price. So that is certainly part of it. But for me, one of the reasons why I was willing to put that euphoria aside and say, you know what, I'm willing to throw some money into this stock, is because of all these changes happening. Again, I think that Airbnb is going to capitalize on it. I think they're going to do a really phenomenal job. I think there's going to be other businesses that they're going to buy. And I think they're going to be really poised for growth. And I think if we look back 2 years from now in 2022 and see where Airbnb is, I think we'll see that their stock price has increased. And I think that the company is going to be doing really well. And again, if their stock price doesn't increase, I'm a buyer on the dips. So for me, here's my overall plan and strategy in thinking about whether you should buy Airbnb stock. Again, this is my own personal opinion of whether I should buy. And I already told you that I already invested. Now, whether I continue to allocate more and more of my portfolio into Airbnb stock is another question. But I would call myself a strategic long-term investor, which, my philosophy is try as best as possible to buy on the dips, to dollar cost average with your investment. So to periodically have money going into that investment on a monthly, weekly, bi-weekly basis, no matter how large or small the amount. And then don't look at it every day. So the one thing that winds up screwing up people's investment strategies the most is that they keep looking at their investment and they're seeing it fluctuate on a daily basis and they're getting freaked out. So do not do that, because that's when you throw yourself off. But be focused on being a long-term investor. My strategy is I'm looking for investments that can make me money in the long term and that I also think have the opportunity to go up in the short term as well. The reality is, if there is a business that I feel really excited about for the long term and it takes a dip, then I'm buying more and I'm putting more into that stock. I did the same thing with Palantir stock. If you guys have heard of Palantir, I made a video on Palantir about how you can double your money investing in Palantir stock. I've already doubled some of my money in Palantir stock, and I've got a significant amount of my portfolio in that stock. I put a large amount of money into Palantir stock, and I bought at various price points. So let me know in the comments below if you want me to make another video on Palantir stock, but make sure you go ahead and check out the one that I've done. All right, guys, so that's what I have to say about Airbnb. If you got value out of this video, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos to come, and drop me a comment and tell me what it is you think about the Airbnb stock. Are you a buyer or how do you feel about it? So make sure to drop me a comment below. If there's any other investing videos you want to see, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.